Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legacy Cafe podcast with your host, Rob Lucy. Rob is the author of the book, How Will You Be Remembered? A Guide for Creating and Enjoying Your Legacies Now. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and find yourself a seat in the Legacy Cafe. Here's Rob.
Thanks, Kathy. Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Lucy. Welcome to the Legacy Cafe. And you know what? New Year's is coming. You remember New Year's, don't you? The time when you make all these resolutions that, well, sometimes we just don't commit to. Sometimes we procrastinate. Sometimes we forgot the resolutions we made by mid-January. Well, we're going to kind of turn resolution around a little bit, give it a different frame so we can create some resolutions that indeed become some of our personal legacies. Now, and I'm only one brain, and I'm one of my favorite quotester, Mark Twain, says, the smartest people in the world borrow brains. I'm going to borrow the brains of my partner, Tom Cormier, in Knoxville, Tennessee. Good day, sir.
Good day, Rob. I'm glad you think I'm a brain.
Okay. Well, we'll let people judge that.
Yeah, let people judge it.
So, you've made resolutions before. I've made resolutions before. How do we turn a resolution into a legacy?
Well, let's just talk about what a typical resolution is. It'd be something like losing weight, I want to travel more, stop smoking, the typical things that we all want to do to improve our lives in some way, or possibly to improve the lives of others or make a difference. And then, procrastination is the killer, committing to a goal to try and get an outcome, and sustaining that outcome is the biggest challenge. So maybe if we put more incentive into it to make a real difference, it might ramp it up and keep people more into it.
If we can turn these resolutions into legacies, it makes us happier, like all legacies do. Remember, legacies connect us to people. They enhance all our lives. We use our significant strengths, and we're happy now. The difference is, and what we're doing here at the Legacy Cafe, is that legacies aren't what you wait for to find out from your eulogist. If you create them now, it makes you happier because you're really using you and connecting to other people. So, if we're going to turn our resolutions into legacy, I'm going to go back to the structure of my book, and let's talk about 3 easy ways, really easy ways to create resolutions right now before New Year's that will become part of your legacies. They will become some of your legacies. How's that sound?
Like it.
Let's do the first one, which was tell your story. This is kind of an easy one. The tell your story, you may remember, is the legacy letter. It's a story of you. And I got a quick story to tell you. I was at a funeral of a friend 2 weeks ago, a very good friend. He and I had done a lot of charity development together. He had written his legacy letter. His wife read the legacy letter at the funeral, and it brought the house down. It was the most joyful piece of work because he told his story. And it's a legacy now because it travels down through his family and his children, and they're all doing legacy letters now to make sure that they're there. And when I did mine, my legacy letter, the story of me, when I did mine, I put it in the drawer. I felt fabulous because I'd now got it done. I poured out who I think I was and how I lived, and it felt great to put it in the drawer. So my legacy letter, the story of me, was really done with values. I assessed what my main values were, and I boiled them down to 5. And I said, for each one of them, why is this value important to me? And how did I live it? And Tom, it didn't take long to do, and when I put it in the drawer, I felt fabulous about it.
Well, I remember you told that story in the episode that we did with Barry Baines on this Dr. Barry Baines on this very subject. Yep. Very compelling, and if there isn't motivation to at least commit to doing your own personal legacy letter, what a great way to do that as a New Year's resolution.
Yep. If you can, and then the way to do it, I counsel people in the book and then in this to deal with their values, but you can put a lot of other things in a legacy letter. You can put various beliefs and talk about what you're good at, your talents, your skills, your triumphs, your failures, your lessons, the love you didn't give, and the love you gave, and there's all kinds of things to put in it. But to get started, I would just say pick one value that you think runs your life, kind of that engine running that you don't even really aware of, but your values help make your decisions for you in life. Just to give you an idea, one of mine is integrity, and I told the story about going up a mountain and how I had a heck of a time getting up there, but I promised a friend of mine I'd put something up there for his wife who was being buried that week. And it was great to tell that story and put it down in a letter. And I shared my legacy letter with my wife, and because I wanted her to know, and it brought us closer together, and others will learn it when I go. So that's the one resolution I would counsel people to get going is assess your values. You can do that in the book. Maybe pick one of them and write the story of that value. Why it's important to you and how you lived it.
Fantastic idea right there, Rob.
And Barry Baines, yeah, he's got we did him a few weeks ago, I guess, Tom. And Barry Baines is the guru of legacy letters and ethical wills, and a great guy.
Dr. Baines was in episode 4, Rob.
Number 4, okay.
Yeah, people can go and look up into the library. It's a great one. If you haven't heard it, definitely go check that one out. You'll know how to write a legacy letter. It's excellent.
So that's, if we can say, that's resolution number 1. Resolve to write your legacy letter and just maybe pick one value or tell a story of your life. And the benefit you'll get out of it, I think, and I know and everybody in Barry's experience has said this too, is that you just feel great putting it in the drawer. And it can be print, it could be video, it could be audio, whatever you like. Pick the media that you're comfortable with. But once you get it done, you feel pretty good that you've got your story now starting to be told. You can go back every month and touch it up, or every 6 months, or whatever you like. That's tell your story. Resolution number 1 becomes a legacy. Number 2, how about gather the story? Every one of us, and you may have heard this before in some other episodes, every one of us has gone to a funeral and said, "Jeepers, why didn't we collect his or her story? It was such a great story, but now it's gone." Wouldn't it be great to, I show pictures in the book of my great-grandparents who came over from Ireland about 1870. I'd love to have known what their life was like, but I wasn't able to talk to them, and we don't have any detail on the struggles and the pain they had to go through to live in the world they lived in. But we can do it now because we've got all kinds of simple media to collect that story.
Well, Rob, you're right. And helping to gather the stories of others, especially, loved ones before they're gone, is a powerful way to create legacies for them. And in the process of doing it, you're actually creating a legacy for yourself. And there are all kinds of barriers to get elders to tell their stories, but all they really need is for someone to sit and take the time to ask, and they will talk about their lives. They want to, especially as they get older. In one of our past episodes with Rick Stone, he made a great idea that I thought was just great, and I talked to my parents about doing the same thing. Sit with your grandchildren sometime, or your children, and get out a piece of paper and draw the floor plan of your childhood home, or even your neighborhood. And as you sit there and scribble it in pencil down, tell about where the stairs went up, the room that you had. What a great experience to share together with everybody.
You're asking Grandma or Grandpa or the person whose story you want to do that, to draw out their old home.
Yes, and their neighborhood. What fun is that, right?
Sometimes my experience is too that people get to an age, and you don't have to just be interviewing or talking to older folks, but when they do, sometimes they say, "Well, I really don't have a story, or my story's not important." And I'm glad you made the point, because it is important. And I said to my father too, before we started on his book, he said, "Why would people want to know the story?" And said, "Dad, first of all, your siblings and your children and your grandchildren want to know." And when we published the book, we had 500 people there, and he really understood the power of him collecting his story and letting people have it. It was a great experience. Here, just an idea. Here's the one thing I can give people who are listening to us now. Here's the key question to ask. And you only need one question to talk to people. And that question is simply, tell me about. Tell me about your education. Tell me about your first career. Tell me about the time the barn burned down. Tell me about. When you ask the question, tell me about, and you'll see journalists do this in interview shows, it gives the person who is talking the right to go anywhere they want. And they'll go somewhere where they're enthusiastic, where it had great meaning for them. So when you're chatting with that person whose story you want to collect, that question, tell me about, is a great one. And that's the only question you need to draw out and make them and have them tell a great story and become closer to all who hear it.
Great tip, Rob.
Our counsel, I think Tom and I are just saying to all of you, as a resolution for New Year's, find somebody whose story you don't want to disappear and sit down with them. You could do it on a tape recorder. You could write it. I would suggest you do it on a tape recorder, or you could do it on video. And I think both you and the interviewee will be so pumped to having had that chat. You'll be much more connected to one another, and there'll be a resolve to let's keep going. Let's gather more of these stories.
Great stuff, Rob. I'll mention also that on our sister site, legacystories.org, everybody, we have an app, and it's a free app. And you can download it both iOS and Android, and it will take a picture of a vintage picture, and then you can record the storyteller's voice describing who the people are in the pictures. And that way, you're just essentially taking all the self-conscious barriers out of the way. We love to reminisce. Put a picture in front of somebody and have them start describing what happened that day and who was taking the picture and all.
Yep.
You can get some amazing stories just by reminiscing. What fun.
And we've got an episode with I think Kathy Nelson, number 3, on how to organize those family pictures. And so if any of you have a whole bunch of family pictures in a box and you wonder, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with that? Listen to number 3, and you may get a hold of Kathy, and she can help you out. She's with the Association of Personal Photo Organizers. And the one thing some of us aren't too good at is organizing those darn photos. Once you get them organized and do what Tom just said, when people look at a picture, it brings back a storm of memories, which can be just great to collect again. One other quick one, Tom. We've got a panel discussion on story 2, episode number 2, with three story producers, and it might be worthwhile to give a listen to before you start to chat with the person whose story you don't want to disappear.
Most of the life-defining moments and memorable events of our lives have been recorded in photographs, old videotapes, old home movies and audio tapes, and also in the keepsakes and memorabilia that we've collected along the course of our lives.
Okay, let's move on. So we've got 2 resolutions so far. One is to tell your own story. Do as simple as just start with one value and tell why that value is important to you and how you lived it. That's the start of tell your own story. And the second resolution is gather the story. Gather the story of somebody whose story you don't want to disappear. All kinds of content there, and some episodes in the cafe here that will be helpful for you. And the third, and frankly the biggest area of legacy and resolution, is you creating new stories. That is creating new legacies that become something you're proud of, that connects you to people, that uses your strengths, that mostly makes you happy now and connects you to people. Boy, that's a resolution. So what's a resolution you could take? This is a fun one that I did, and this is personal. So we've got a little corner down at the end of the street that was really kind of ugly. That was a fence behind it and a big forest and one of those great big yellow concrete abutments. I didn't like the look of it. Now, I'm a gardener. I like gardening. I went in there one day and started to clean it up, and pretty soon there were 15 neighbors there. We all cleaned it up. Everybody kicked in a bunch of money, and I went down and bought a whole bunch of stuff, and this is 4 years ago. In 4 years, that corner has been a botanical garden. People come by to see it because I maintain it, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It connected me to people down the end of the street, which we never saw. It used my strengths, which is a gardener and a bit of a storyteller, and it created this thing that enhanced all our lives. When we drive past that corner, everybody smiles. So that was a really simple creation of a new story, a creation of a legacy. So I'm saying, I think here, just before New Year's, take a look at your talents and skills and say, what could I build? How can I take advantage of those talents and skills to connect me to people and enhance some lives?
So, Rob, if I could, I'll give you a shameless plug right here for our listeners. If you haven't read Rob's book yet, How Will You Be Remembered? A Guide for Creating and Enjoying Your Legacies Now, I am just telling you, most of the things we're talking about right here are in that book. And it is so inspiring that it will help you to complete your resolutions throughout the year. It really did. It helped me a lot as well. So I'm highly recommending that. You can get more information. Just go to the legacycafe.org website and you'll get that information, legacycafe.org.
Good, thanks, Tom. There's some smarter people in the world than me for sure. A couple of episodes you might enjoy too on creating your own legacies with your talents and the skills, etc. There's a guy named John Cotre who's wrote a book called Make It Count. He's episode number 8. And then a colleague of mine named Rick Antonsen, who was the guru of what is called cathedral thinking, and that is really thinking about what your effect is on the future, and really enjoying creating it now. Rick Antonsen talks about cathedral thinking, and it might be worthwhile if you haven't listened to it to have a boo.
One more thing on story, Rob. I wanted to let our listeners know that we have a story contest that's ongoing, and we do this so that we can try to give people an incentive and a reason to start, to write something, a paragraph, a page, regarding their life story. And the idea is to compile stories from you, our listeners, and then invite some winners, choose some winners, and get you to be able to share your story right here on the Legacy Cafe podcast. So I think that's really good incentive. And that's a great first step in your resolution this year.
Yep.
And you can find out how to submit your story to the story contest on our website, legacycafe.org. And I highly encourage you to visit that site because we're always adding great new content to it. Okay, that's legacycafe.org. And by the way, Rob, what is your resolution for 2018, or resolutions?
You're putting me on the spot. Well, I'm gonna stick to what we've done here. There's three areas. Tell your story. I've done that one. I've got my legislator done. Although every 3 or 4 months I go in and touch it up. My resolution on gathering the stories of those who don't want to disappear. I've got 2 people, and I resolved to go get their stories done. And that's one of my resolutions. And the other resolution I've got is when we talked about number 3, create your stories. I work with a couple of charities. I've got a couple of resolutions in how to make both of them grow and be more effective for the audience they serve. And Tom, okay, those are mine. And your resolutions coming up in a couple of days?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Golden Rule. I wish I applied it more to my life. But I'm going to recommit, because I was a real avid Golden Rule advocate. I am going to recommit to being guided by the Golden Rule. We have an incredible episode coming up. In fact, I think it's our next episode with Paul McKenna. He's the Golden Rule guru, if you will, worldwide leader of the Golden Rule movement that's taking place. I'm going to join that movement because I really do believe that if the world and more of us lived as simply by the Golden Rule, it would solve so many problems that we have right now. And I think that's something worth committing myself to. And I hope our listeners will check out that episode and will join that movement too. That is a resolution of mine coming up.
Okay, way to go. We'll be checking you for a year to see how you lived it. So the 3 resolutions we've got here is begin to tell your story. Think of one value that drives you and why it's important to you and how you lived it. That's resolution number 1, telling your story. Resolution 2 is gathering the story of somebody whose story you don't want to disappear. We've given you some ideas on how to start it, but most importantly, they may say, I don't think my story is important. Tell them it is. Let them know that you do want to know, and then just ask them that simple question, tell me about, and it could be about anything you like. So start to gather the story of somebody whose story you don't want to disappear. And the third resolution is to use your talents and skills and think of what you could do to them that would connect you to people, that would enhance your lives. I told you about the little garden at the corner. You just never know what your skills and talents are going to grow into, and that is a joyful legacy when you look back at it and say, holy smokes, that was worthwhile doing. So those are 3 types of resolutions you can make in the next couple of days.
If you really want to make a difference, everybody, and that's what I believe you even listen to these podcasts for, you could really help us and help the world by sharing this podcast with your friends. Thank you very much for that.
Yep. We will see you in the new year. I'm Rob Lucy with Tom Cormier, way down there in Knoxville. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're delighted to get together and put these together for you. We'll see you in the new year. Happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to the Legacy Cafe podcast. We have lots of great conversations coming your way. And by the way, if you want us to send you reminders that a new podcast is ready for you, go to legacycafe.org to subscribe. That's legacycafe.org. Have a great day, and remember, the coffee and conversations are always hot at the Legacy Cafe.